just for recording purposes, I'm gonna sort of disable the waiting room. Anyone now can trickle in. Um, just letting you guys know. So here we
Got
are.
it.
Great.
Thanks,
Got
Zoe.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beth and Steve, I would love to, I can absolutely sympathize, right? Like getting monthly speakers in is a whole thing in and of itself. You need a couple people who are kind of prospecting and connecting and all this kind of stuff. And even in a smaller cluster, that doesn't sound super feasible. You'd need a legion to get all that done. So, what I'm obviously still learning. So, what, in your view, have been the biggest wins of the air quality cluster? And like, are there ways to sustain some of that in a way that's sort of easy to administer?
Hmm.
For the clusters, is it going to a quarterly, lecture,
Right.
that's widely advertised? And it just keeps the embers of interest on this topic alive.
Right. Right.
Is it, I don't know. Like, what
Yeah,
does it look like to you, given what
I
has
feel
happened
like
before?
we need to come up, we need to decide what problem we want to solve in this
Mm,
space because air
mhm,
quality is very nebulous when we just say we're interested in air quality. Of course, we all are because we don't want to breathe in toxins and whatnot. Um, and my, at least for myself, my enthusiasm, I think, waxes when there's some specific problem that I want to try to solve. And and so, maybe if we think a little bit about that today, like, is there some kind of air quality related problem?
mhm,
I mean, personally, for me, for my company, I am trying to focus on, empowering people. Uh, and also, I'll tell you, just as a my daughter is a lawyer, and we are interested in collecting data that might support high impact lawsuits against
mm, mhm.
um, against polluters or cities that aren't doing anything, or whatever. I don't know. You can't really. It's hard to sue the government. They're immune from almost all things, up to and including murder. So but that is an interest of ours, as
Mhm, mhm,
on that scale. And so if we
mhm,
kind of think, and that has actually inspired me to go in a particular direction with things that I want to do, and
Sure. Yeah.
empower people to collect data locally,
mhm, mhm,
and thinking about ways of getting people around my neighborhood or my city interested in monitoring their air quality. And so
We,
having that
yeah,
focus, informs specific steps that I might take to try to get to that goal. I think it's hard when you don't have a goal to figure out what steps you want to take and what
sure.
you want to do, and whether you want to do it quarterly or monthly,
mhm.
right? Until we
Right.
if we can spend some time maybe to think of some objective that we would
Mhm,
like to get to with this cluster, that might help us figure out, what kind of structure it should have.
mhm,
I
Um,
think we saw some energy earlier post hackathon. We had kind of surfaced the concept of a community air quality toolkit. That was
mhm,
the premise was that we were seeing more communities concerned about their air quality,
mhm,
but kind of at the earliest stage of, okay, so what do we do? And because Purple Air in particular has become fairly widely known, we definitely, and Karen has some firsthand experience with this. Karen Moe, who has joined us with a relatively small DC metro town, but people wanting to like harness Purple Air, but not really having the broader awareness, like a point of departure is, okay, purple air measures PM 2.5. What is PM 2.5? And what's its relevance for health purposes? And is that all we should worry about, or are there other pollutants that we should be concerned about in addition to PM
Mm-hmm.
2.5? And of course, the answer is yes,
Mm-hmm.
prominently including ozone as just one. But and I feel like we made some progress towards sketching out the toolkit idea, but then I know my energy level subsided.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I like this idea very much, though, and I think if we could, I think we should consider returning to that and actually trying to recruit people with concrete
I do too.
tasks.
And
Mhm.
I think I'm perceiving now that we could take advantage of AI to help when we're developing something
Yeah.
like that. I've played with it some, and because I had a bunch of rough notes that I'd pulled together, and as Beth saw, and it's actually thrown into our resource document. I was able to use Gemini to process all of the rough, disorganized notes that I had, and it came up with a construct that I think is actually fairly
Yeah.
helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I thought that was really impressive, actually. I really, I think that's a good start for
it's
us. We could
intriguing.
start with that.
It's intriguing. We
And
also
then,
we had a session in the July 2024 ESIP meeting where we did, at the meeting itself, we pulled together several speakers, including the founder of Purple Air, whose story is quite interesting actually. And it's kind of a, I think it's kind of a cool recording, which is out there. So that demonstrated, but it took a fair amount of work, of course, as you were saying, Sarah, to organize the speakers. And I remember running into a lot of glitches while doing that. But
Mhm.
there is energy out there, and wildfire smoke exposure has been a particular topic of
mm-hmm.
interest where we
Mhm.
have some overlap, arguably, with the wildfire cluster.
So let me
You
ask you an, oh, go ahead.
No, I just was going to say, as we're developing this toolkit, I like the idea of focusing on that and integrating possibly speakers, once a quarter, like maybe we meet once a month with sort of tasks toward building the toolkit, but then intersperse that with talks from health researchers or air quality researchers or lawyers, or people that might be able to help us, help us put some um structure to it, right? Like what should a toolkit have, and who are we building it for, and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
having community advocates or different
Mhm.
kinds of people come in and say, here's what I need, here's what I don't have, here's
Mhm.
what would be helpful for me, so that we keep focused on it. So every once in a while get somebody to come in and talk to us about how important this might be or not, right? I mean, I don't know,
Mhm.
but I think hearing from, I sort of thought of Karen when I was seeing Karen, I guess I should say, made me think along these lines, because we have leaned heavily on her in the past to talk
Mhm.
about her work in her neighborhood. And it's been really inspirational. And I think having people, and not to keep pressuring Karen to have to always talk at every one of our meetings about her own work, but having people like Karen coming in and talking about their challenges, and even challenges of getting people engaged, right? How do you get people in the community engaged? What is it that they need, and what do they, what access challenges might they have, and
Mhm.
how can we help with that?
Yeah, I was just before you spoke, Beth, I wanted to say, with ESIP's interest in kind of putting data to work and like empowering people to use the information, I really like where this line of discussion is going, because quite honestly, air quality is a very publicly accessible Earth system concept.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so this could actually be an opportunity to really expand and demonstrate some new partnership opportunities or new product ideas or whatever that the ESIP community can generate
Right.
that serves a need that has been articulated by data users, because that's something we really want. But it also kind of weaves together some stuff that has been going on in here for a long time. So this
Yeah.
sounds really, worth kind of workshopping a little bit
Yeah.
more
And
towards that whole, who are we serving and what are we trying to accomplish here?
I'm super interested in, reaching out to other communities. I mean, my company would be willing to try to do make some contribution to this. Like, maybe I can throw some developer support in at this or something. And I'm also, interested in talking to my daughter and people that she works with in the legal field about what do they need, right? What do lawyers need who are interested in trying to one of the things that my daughter does in addition to practicing law is, and actually we're working together on this, but we're forming a membership organization that is modeled after ALEC, but with the idea is to have people come together and tell us what their legislative priorities are. And we have a lobbyist who will then go to the legislature in Colorado, where we are, and say, this is what our membership, the writing model legislation to, improve air quality. That could be one, for example. We're working on things like transparency in government and Freedom of Information Act issues where they charge you $50,000 to have the information and arguing that that's not actually freedom of information, but that could be, these kinds of issues. I think would air quality, right? What can we do? What kind of legislation would people want to see to combat the problem of have a chronic polluter in our neighborhood, and they just do it. They get fined. They just keep going, and so what could be done, right? I'd love to have a lawyer come in and say, here's what we can do. Have a legislator come in and say, here's what we would need, right? Here's what we need to hear from people. We need to, because I think in many cases legislators don't think people, like, they don't do stuff because they don't think that they'll have any consequences for not doing what we want to them to do. They do what Suncor wants because they seem to, they feel the consequences because Suncor won't donate to them or something. But if they know that all of their constituents know that they're refusing, right, to do anything to clean up air, these kinds of, like, how do we get people engaged? I guess this is sort of, how do we make that happen? How do we make legislators fear that they'll be voted out of office if they let polluters continue? And maybe Karen has a little experience with that in her work. I'm not sure if that's ever come up for you, Karen, but I'm very interested in that problem. Yeah.
Love to say something. Um, uh, we have followed up our Purple Air Network when we had a grant from EPA, the state of Maryland, to augment with other sensors that provided a range of pollutant monitoring capabilities. And like one of the things that we've discovered is that we have a very high source of black carbon in our community. And you do get that from traffic, but a lot of trucks have been, the laws have been passed to, reduce the black carbon coming out of a lot of trucks. But we don't know where this kind of significant source is coming from. But running into problems like there is no regulation of black carbon, and even the regulation of PM 2.5 has been denigrated or downgraded by the,
Mm-hmm.
at least attempted by the administration. I don't know if they fully succeeded with that yet. So I think that, having this legal aspect and the idea of collecting information, locally information that might contribute to a legal case, but it gets, I think, really complicated because,
Mm-hmm.
like with our experience with black carbon, since there isn't a regulation for it, there's just, a lot of ways that um, legally we don't have a good mechanism for carrying it forward. And
Yeah.
the other thing I was going to mention is that kind of out of this work over the last 5 years in the state of Maryland, we people who've been working with these various grants and focusing on air quality, we've been pressuring our legislation, in the state on a bill that's gone into the process, been, supported by people in both our House and Senate for called Cherish, and the C is for cumulative or in community, and it's really looking at the cumulative impacts of various pollutants over time in certain neighborhoods. So, if your neighborhood is, on the other side of the river, that kind of thing, that's where they want to put all of their industry,
Mm-hmm.
make it convenient. And so the cumulative impact on those neighborhoods is what, this bill is trying to achieve, that there would be some way of controlling that. Um, so when you talk about, how the community might need this science data, I think that, coming up with a program
Yeah.
that really explains the complexities here as well
Yeah.
as the importance. And
Yeah.
I believe that, what we're doing, if we're collecting the data over a long period of time, years, that data will have more value over time. And uh, the other aspect is, why is it important to the community? And so that's the health aspect. And more information has come out in the last 3 or 4 years that I've been exposed to. But at a state level, the people who manage health statistics, we haven't been able to, or I haven't been able to really hear from them, about the importance of uh, clean air
Mm-hmm.
health aspects. So I think that's another area that would need more information. So the legal
Yeah.
health aspects,
Yeah.
um,
So
really important.
uh, a couple other points is, Sarah, I appreciate you joining us. I know you probably need to move around, but just very quickly, another area that I think is really important is the so what can I do about it area. Like, okay, I'm getting more information maybe about my air quality, but am I helpless, or are there any things I can do to be protective? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important area that's maybe not so much a traditional ESIP space, but the sort of actionable information
Yeah.
aspect. And also, there are so many new monitoring capabilities coming online. It's a rapidly evolving situation. Some really interesting new satellite instruments that have a lot of capabilities, as well as more intensive ground-based monitoring. So there's a lot of things, I think, a lot of great opportunities. But yeah, I know Sarah, I got her just before she left. So,
Yeah.
which is good. I knew she had to, because she's trying to rotate around among sessions as the
Yeah. No,
new,
I'm glad she was able to join us for a
yeah,
bit, though.
that
That was
was
great.
that was lucky for us. Um, Karen, so how are you feeling about where your situation is at in Cheverly right now. I mean, you talked about it some already, but do you
Oh,
feel like you're making progress
well,
overall, or?
I feel that we have survived, the first onslaught of the administration, in that our project, which had been, was awarded in 2023 as a 2-year project. We got a 1-year extension. We didn't get any, additional money or anything like that, but we have, more time. It really took us 2 years to get our 3 communities. 2 of them are closer to Baltimore, and then mine closer to Washington, D.C., to get those sensors set up. And then we actually have 2 other sites that are kind of control sites. And so we really needed another year for this aspect of collecting the data and getting it back into the hands of the community. So unfortunately, a lot of the hits on universities has been really hard on our project because, when they get a project,
Mhm.
develop a system for, a data system to present information and allow the community to kind of ask questions about the data and explore it. Um, they couldn't succeed with that part. Fortunately, the University of Maryland, they have a program that uh, the state and the university have proposed about climate resilience. And so one of our researchers was able to get us hooked up with that. And so we have a student, now working on a dashboard for us. And I've been, pushing, the dashboard that we had from a few years ago. I don't think it's currently available anymore because um, Esri, it's still called Esri,
Yeah.
they made the big change, and they kind of dropped the uh, that product. You were really supposed to kind of upgrade to their new product. Uh, for yeah. So anyway, when I went to look for it just recently, it wasn't there. But I should check a couple more times because
Mm.
it might have just been a bad time when I checked. Um, but anyway, we're trying to build on the information that had been collected by ESIP, um, and yeah, it's a struggle now. And I still think how you present the complementary health data is a real challenge. So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I still have my eye on the geodata for health, the new cluster, as a potential opportunity because I think they're coming more from the health interest, but looking for, you know, geodata written broadly, to support health studies. So that's one of our possible futures is to, try to build our relationship with with them. Ann Thesson is kind of running that primarily. And also the envirosensing cluster definitely is pursuing the, that it's sort of any kind of environmental sensing. But again, there's some overlap, I think, with some of what they're up to. And like you might have come on just after Zoe mentioned it, but envirosensing continues to be a fairly lively cluster in the scheme of things. Or, I
Mhm.
mean, at least they're holding monthly meetings and, the stuff is going on and they have interested people.
Yeah,
So,
so that's a good point. Like integrating with some of these other clusters and having them come and talk to us, like envirosensing, what's new, right? What what do they have to help us with our toolkit? That kind of a thing might actually help. And then Steve, do you have that AI generated outline that you sent me earlier? Can we take a look at that? Can you share it on your screen?
It's
Because
popped.
I think it would be interesting to look at it from the lens, through the lens of, civic engagement, or like how might we um organize a toolkit around some theme based on those categories. And
Hmm, hmm.
I don't know,
Maybe
just
bear with me. Maybe I'm thinking about my strategy here to get to it. Maybe
yeah.
it's in the resource
I
document.
have it in my inbox, but it's on my phone, and I'm upstairs. I'm not near my phone, and I'm on my NASA
Yeah, no,
computer, and
you don't want to
I can't try to get it. But
give
But
me. Oh,
like
no.
ways that we might be able to also, I know Karen has worked with students on specific tasks in her work with her in her community, and I'm thinking I'm going to reach out to you one of these days, Karen, and find out how I can sort of replicate what you've done in Maryland in my community in Denver, because I do want to do something similar. But can we engage students? Like, can we get interns to? Can we get Cheyenne to be our fellow? Are you going to be our fellow? Can we have a fellow? I mean, is that what they? Yeah. To how can we engage students in this work, and how can we engage others outside of our normal ESIP community? I would love to see us get, like, I'm always just in my NASA land, NASA and sometimes NOAA, and a little bit of EPA thrown in, I guess. But there are other ESIP clusters that aren't so NASA centric. And
Right,
and I'd
right.
like to think about how to make this interesting to people.
It
Like outside of my usual world.
is am I messing up her name? Elizabeth Bryant is she's still active with the whole air quality Pathfinder thing in
Oh,
NASA?
yeah, Elizabeth Joyner, you mean?
Joyner, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I not really, because she's actually here at the ASDC now. I mean, we are at one of the air quality DACs, of course, or yeah, a DAC that with air quality data. So in that sense, she's still
Right,
active in
right.
air quality stuff, but I bet she'd be interested if she's not too busy. She's very busy,
Mm.
leading the team that does the science mission support. And so, they're responsible for publishing all the data that we publish and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But let me ask her, because she's a great person to she's really good at outreach and organizing and planning, and I'd love to get her involved in this, actually. I will talk to her. In fact, maybe I'll buy her a beer tonight, as I'm here at the ASDC this week, and
There,
see if I
there you
can
go.
talk her into joining us. Yeah.
There you go. Well,
And then,
you
our
asked for
DAC
it.
scientist also, although I don't know I don't know how helpful he would be. Um, is certainly interested in air quality, and he could provide some science.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe I can talk him into joining and he's a little bit, he gets busy too, and then kind of tends to not show up because he's got a lot of
Life,
meetings.
life, yeah.
Like most of us, right? I mean, that
Well,
happens to me too, and that has happened. But I do feel like if we have a real solid, like, I mean, if we have something really concrete that we are trying to accomplish, I think that I myself will feel more motivated, and
yeah,
will be able to
yeah.
motivate others better than when I'm also going, oh, I don't know what's happening in that air quality cluster.
Right, right. Well, Well, you asked for it, Beth, so here it is. You're seeing the screen,
Yeah,
hopefully.
thank you. Yeah,
So,
because I'm just curious, like, what are the pollutants and having different, like a toolkit where, like, thinking about if I'm a person who might sort of be interested in air quality but I don't know where to go, how could I, you know, how could we provide something to them where they're like, oh my gosh, what are the different pollutants? I hear that there's a lot of blah 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 in my neighborhood, and then they could go in there, and so I just wanted to sort of look through these and have us think a little bit about how somebody might be what might somebody be interested in learning in each of these categories. um
so,
finding out what the toxins in my area are, and then maybe finding out about those toxins, and creating a kind of graph, right, where I'm like, I'm in here and I've learned that I have a lot of black carbon in my neighborhood, and I want to know more about black carbon, and then I'm going to know what the sources of black carbon are and what are the health impacts of black carbon, and thinking about how we could create something like that, where I could sort of start on a node and navigate through a graph that would provide me with a lot of different insights into some particular thing. And I just wanted to see these categories again to get my brain
so, so,
thinking.
so this was generated from the rough notes on the Community Air Quality Toolkit stemming back a couple of years ago. And this is Google Gemini. So it was their idea to organize the concepts into 5 core domains: the what's in the air, where does it come from, how do we measure it, what are the consequences, and how do we manage it, which is not a bad set of organizing constructs,
Mm-hmm.
arguably. So, yeah, I don't want to go through all of this in detail, but the idea of, okay, well, what are the pollutants? And this is one way to start to think about it, that you have the gaseous pollutants and then you have the particulate matter, and you could start to think about what are the actual chemicals involved. Spatial and temporal, obviously. you know
Yeah.
you want data, that georeference data. You need to know the time frame, blah blah blah. um
Yeah.
the whole question of what are the physics, basically, um of air pollution. So you get into atmospheric science, and there's also um modeling needs. The
Yeah.
source aspect, so where are the emissions coming from? And this is a biggie for EPA. The way the EPA thinks about air quality is sources and source control. So
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of, not terrible. Um, if we're thinking about, those are the broad categories that EPA looks at. Then you have the whole measurement aspect, and I do like the so what and what now construct. What are the impacts or effects? Health and welfare is a way to think about it. There are, in addition to the straight up human health effects, there are economic impacts, genuine economic impacts. And it's interesting to me, you've heard me babble about this before, but I think it's still kind of an under-recognized phenomenon that ozone in particular causes non-trivial crop loss, where
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about billions of dollars of estimated economic impact from lower yields caused by ozone exposures.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't know if you've tried to buy produce recently in the grocery store, but man, we have had the worst produce in our stores recently. I mean, I know it's winter, but usually that you can find something, but
uh, uh,
it's
ozone
I'm
is definitely not helpful. And
I'm sure
I
I know.
I
I'm
still laugh that NASA has they call it the Ozone Garden program. That's a citizen science or civic science thing. But most of the NASA people I talk to aren't aware that this program exists. The only reason I know about it is because I'm a master naturalist, and some of my master naturalist colleagues are actually doing it locally here. So that's how I heard about it. But it's kind of an interesting civic science thing, and that's a whole other aspect of this domain, of course, is the civic science, like people standing up their own purple air monitors and that kind of thing. And okay, what are the interventions? You've got legal, regulatory, you've got engineering interventions that a company hypothetically could do, whether it's required or not. Changes in behavior, sometimes caused by jawboning and media exposure. Like, companies generally don't like bad publicity. So when you do have data
Mm-hmm.
that you've collected and you have a media campaign to make the public more aware, this is what's actually crossing the fence line from the facility, that could have impact. Even if, like there might be a lawsuit going on or whatever, but in parallel. And it kind of a logic chain. Um, So anyway, this is sitting out there in the resources document. So if you feel like poking around more, it's sitting out there. Um, but I do think we could, and I went to the session in the last segment this afternoon on AI and deep learning and agentic coding and stuff. And what I was hearing in that session was kind of like, wow, a lot of this stuff that Ben and Steve Nesbitt are talking about could be relevant, to work in this area. It was quite intriguing, but sort of beyond my technical skill set, even though you don't need as much of a technical skill set to invoke those tools. So that's the thing. I'm going to unshare now, I think, but
Is that link available? It looks like an interesting thing to review.
yeah.
You
Can
share it?
can we throw the resource document link into, or is it already up in chat?
Uh, are,
Mm,
do you mean the notes session, the
yeah,
session notes
yeah,
document?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's in Kiko chat. You can use it directly from there.
Okay,
But
that works just
yeah,
fine.
Okay,
that's
yeah.
where I'm.
So, oh, thanks, Cheyenne. Yeah.
Yeah, or the link.
Plus, if you want to throw some more stuff in there, please feel encouraged. Well, I'm a believer in giving back time to people when when the opportunity arises. So um, I'll just sort of ask the question: do we want to kick around more, or I know I sometimes I just like to pull back and process some,
Yeah,
but
no, I'd like to pull back and process, but I'd be interested. I mean, I guess it's the three of us again, as always, me, Steve, and Karen.
we're kind of regulars. Wait,
Do
I
we
did.
do we want to spin back up? I mean, do we want to take a stab at it, or are we thinking the lack of participation today is a
I
harbinger of
I
things to
I
come?
I I think people voted with their feet, basically. We did hear from Colleen Rosales, who sort of
Yeah.
apologized that she couldn't make it. But we know that she's still interested, and we've got some known interested people. If I had
Well, what
been
if
more,
Yeah,
I'd
I
been
mean, what
more
if we do a
organized,
reorg, some kind of reorg and refocus, right? And say, look, it's not just the air quality cluster, but it's the air quality blah 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 cluster that um just a little marketing thing that we could send
Listen,
around.
maybe
any marketing you want to do, I'm on board. I can make you pretty graphics. I can
Sweet.
advertise meetings, but I think, yeah, first there has to be.
Like, what
yeah.
if, like, what if we focus on civic engagement in around air quality or something like that and call it the air quality civic engagement cluster or something like that, that would give it a sort of a different flavor. Maybe not, maybe it's not that, but that's my real interest here is sort of the civic
Right.
engagement piece of it.
Well, well, I'm going to suggest, I think, that we ruminate a little bit,
Okay.
and what would make sense. What I was going to say was, in a perfect world, I would have done some targeted outreach to
Mm-hmm.
known suspects who've shown interest in the past, to encourage
Mm-hmm.
them to come to this session. And I did not execute that, which was not helpful.
Yeah, me
But
too. And a lot of people that I know that might have been interested aren't even at ESIP this year.
I think
That
that's
seems to
another
be it.
factor, right? I think
Yeah.
that the disruption has, I'm sure it's cost us people who otherwise might have been here,
Yeah.
especially, but not limited to, but especially the agencies. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's ugly out there.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the only person from the ASTC that's attending. And I don't, that's not entirely because nobody else could have gotten permission, but I think people are a little bit hesitant because we have to get in it, like the deadlines have moved way forward. We have to get um
yeah,
permission that long before our brains are even ready to start thinking about it. And then by the time you go, oh, I should really submit a request for attending this conference, by then it's too late, the door is closed. So
yeah.
I think that that is a bit of a problem still. I think things are looking a little better. I
Well,
believe
before,
that.
I was just going to say, in answer to Steve's comment about quitting a little early, I did put in there the link to the Environmental Protection Network. And
Yes, I want to know more about that, actually.
I've been working with them and the various grant awardees from the EPA's grant back in 2023. And they have done a lot of work just bringing together these projects throughout the United States. And many of them are successfully concluding and developing tools and the like. And it seems like there might be a good, kind of cooperation between ESIP and them. I mean, I think ESIP
Yeah.
will provide another opportunity, for them to, show some results, and people might be interested in doing that. And I know some of the grantees have developed their own tools like dashboards, and I've been trying to get our team to look at them, but it's a little bit of not invented here that still goes on. Um,
Yeah, I know.
if we've always been, ESIP has always been a group that, is open about collaborating and working jointly together on projects instead of so much competition.
Yeah.
So anyway, I put their link in, and you can see the breadth of things that they do. They're, well, nicely coupled with EPA, especially former EPA folks. And I do know the person who's been organizing our monthly meetings, and yeah, so there might be they might come and, present to an ESIP discussion at some point.
Who is that
Right.
person, Karen?
Jamie, her last name is Zwaszka, Zwaszka.
Okay, don't know her. Okay, huh. Yeah, I mean, a number of former colleagues are active with
Yeah.
them, and I know
Ethan
some of
shared, I
them.
can't remember his last name, but Ethan was very active.
Oh,
Uh,
Ethan McMahon.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, he attends a lot of these meetings, kind of at the organizational level.
Okay. Yeah, I have not been closely engaged with them, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts before we wrap? Hearing.
Did you Cheyenne has a
Yeah, sorry.
I wanted to ask, can you tell me a bit more about what is the AQ toolkit, the community AQ toolkit that you guys were discussing? What does that entail exactly?
So
The toolkit.
I thought of it as an information resource, so that if someone is in, quite possibly a smaller community and they're concerned about air quality and they want to do something, to have an information resource that would help a person get started with a program, in their community. So that was kind of the idea in a nutshell. In fact, at one point, I was also using the term primer or primer, like, give me orientation to what this is all about,
Right.
so that I have a broad enough understanding to think about how what I might do would fit into the context. That's kind of what the thought process was. And we
And
go
Mhm.
ahead, go ahead.
No, and so what happened to that? Because I am thinking because this semester I'm part of I'm co-teaching an aerosol class, and I've from professors I've always heard this issue of students are not really interested in air quality. They are like, oh, okay, it's a class, I have to take a credit, then done. But like, to make them feel engaged and to get them acquainted with the pressing issues that we have. For example, we try to do all this air now, AQI, the air quality life index. Then we try to engage them with OpenAQ so that they can deal with data as well. But I was thinking, if this toolkit is a success, then that is something that would be really useful to introduce them to, something like that. Like, this is your go-to place if
Yeah,
you're
Yeah.
really interested.
That's what I want us to do
that
too. A
that's
place
kind of,
where,
and in all honesty, Cheyenne, I think it was a good idea. I was sort of promoting the idea and trying to develop some basic concepts, but I kind of ran out of energy. It's also true, we had some fellow support several years ago, and then we wound up without a supporting fellow, and that did have impact, because
it did.
like our last fellow it was very helpful that she was like looking at the calendar and reminding people about meetings,
Yep.
and pinging me, hey Steve, so that was actually helpful, and it did have some impact that we lost fellow support.
hmm
I
I'm not
see.
second guessing, but that didn't help. I think you would have a really helpful perspective. I mean, Karen's got a useful perspective from her work that she's been doing, but you would also have a very helpful perspective. And you were just starting to talk about it. How do you draw people in? Like usually I think I talked about it in that session I mentioned 2 years ago that's recorded. I tried to open with the business about World Health Organization estimated 7 million excess deaths per year attributable to poor air quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people dying because of
Yeah,
bad air quality, and that should get people's attention. You would
absolutely.
hope. But in addition to that, even if it's not death as such, other adverse health impacts, asthma, um, higher rates of asthma, um, impacts not only to humans but also to pets and wildlife, that they're
Mm-hmm.
affected. Some people care more about pets. I get that. It could be very bad for pets. And the Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I was about to say something really important and I lost the train of thought. But the kind of what can you do about it also, like, um, it's an interesting area. There are people out there coming up with relatively low cost air filtration mechanisms. There's like kind of a do it yourself pseudo open source. Well, actually, there's more than one um, air purifier kind of thing there's, I think, a couple of designs that use box fans and HEPA filters where they're kind of like duct taped
Oh,
to the
nice.
box fan, but if it's done properly, they've conducted measurements and they've shown that you are reducing, particulate levels as a result of this kind of relatively low cost. I realize it's not necessarily helpful in a lot of developing country situations, but it it's an interesting area. So, and my favorite example, um, that I always use, but you haven't heard it yet, is I learned from playing um, with Air Now animations, and it made sense, but I hadn't thought about it. Ozone levels typically are much lower early in the morning, and they rise during the course of the day as the volatile organic compounds in the air cook in the sunlight, so that you tend to get significantly higher ozone levels as you go into the late afternoon and evening. So for people who exercise, they would be so much better off if it's a vigorous exercise like running, doing it early in the morning rather than waiting until after work or class and running in the evening. So there's some very practical things like that you could convey um, to people that could make a difference in their health, because it's, we know that ozone, it causes lung damage. I mean, it's a very direct relationship between excess ozone exposures and tangible damage. You can recover up to a point, but it's real. So anyway, um, but I think you could help us to think about use cases from your experience, that could help us kind of come back to this idea and maybe reinvigorate it, because I still think it's a good idea.
Right.
So yeah, and I see the crosstalk in chat. Yeah, there also was a more recent Funding Friday, and that's one of the outreaches that I didn't get to do with Amy Kwarkume from Howard University. Her I had hoped to touch base with Amy and Magali out in Los Angeles, but did not get there before this session. So I would have loved to get an update from them about their work, but in both cases, also people who are, looking at underserved communities here in the United States. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Cheyenne, I would say, at any point, if you wanted to start kind of noting down some ideas, and sharing those, that would be wonderful. I'd
Yeah,
encourage that.
of course. My I was talking to some of the students and I was telling them maybe I should take, if I had the funding, I should take you to a trip to India or South Asia and show you that. So I'm in Tucson at the moment, and here the AQI is 30. And when I go back home, the AQI is 300, 10 times more. And it's not just you're living in that constantly, and that's a different experience. Bad, good, that's different, but your perspective changes when you are in a different area. So I was telling them that if I had the funding, I should take you to a trip and show you that why this is relevant and what it feels like.
Yeah, actually, my son was fortunate to he traveled in India. This was several years ago for about 2 weeks. So he got to see quite a lot actually, and he experienced some of the air quality issues firsthand. And that was also, I mean, that's another anecdote that I love. It shows sort of the older days here. China, of course, has had severe issues, Beijing, and the U.S. Embassy shows back, I think it was around 2008 or somewhere like that. They put up a air quality monitor on their rooftop, and they made the data openly available. And the Chinese government was very angry because, of course, the data that the U.S. Embassy was collecting and reporting showed extremely poor air quality, and the government didn't like that. But ultimately, they realized it was better to actually acknowledge the problem and try to start working on the problem. But I was sort of proud of our country that we actually sort of helped instigate that by, sort of a creative action. The embassy is theoretically U.S. territory, so theoretically they could do whatever they wanted to do, and they did. But it was kind of a key starting point to help encourage the government of China to take more measures to address. It's still an issue, but my understanding is it's not as bad as it was, and in spite of all the economic growth. So, all right. Well, I'm going to say it's 5:00 Eastern. Thank you very much, everybody. And I think this has been helpful for me, and maybe I'll have another burst of energy coming out of this.
That's what I'm hoping for too, Steve, on my side. I want a burst of energy around this. Because I am super interested in this. I really do want this to go forward.
And it's important. I mean, darn it, this is really important. So, and I do think it's a good fit for ESEP. So, and I'm so glad that Sarah did join us for a chunk there. That was really great. So I'm looking forward to her as the new executive director. So.
Karen, are you getting much traffic to that story map link do people come from your community and do you know, are you collecting any metrics?
Not a lot of, no. Well,
No.
Yeah, it doesn't really have metrics the way, as a story map, it was
Mm,
pulling together easy access to information.
mm-hmm.
The dashboard that people are working
Yeah,
on now is the more analytical one.
yeah,
And I'm hoping that we can combine the two, but
yeah,
have complete control over how,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right. All right. Well,
Okay.
Steve, thanks for organizing us and getting us back together.
Oh,
It's
you're
good to
welcome.
see you. Good to see you, Karen.
Yes, yes. And thanks, Zoe and Cheyenne, for the
And
support.
yes,
And
good
more
to
to
meet you
come.
both.
And don't forget tomorrow's session that Bruce, Karen, and I are doing on supporting disrupted
Mm-hmm.
scientists.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's been part of my bandwidth lately, has been tracking some of the stuff that's going on. In fact, there's been a lot
yeah.
of lively discussion, Karen, about what's happening at Goddard, which sounds
Well,
nightmarish.
I heard that the Senate has now passed the bill to fund NASA and NOAA and to fund science again, and it's just waiting for Trump's signature. So I hopefully the whole Goddard thing will get resolved without Goddard being shut down. I don't
Knock
know.
on wood. A lot of
Yeah.
damage has already been done, as I
No, I
understand it.
know. I know. Don't even get me started.
Yeah,
People gone.
Isaacman was at Langley recently talking about, like last week, recently, I think it was last week, talking about the need to hire more civil servants at NASA. You know, after we've run off 25% of the workforce, and now we need to, and contractors are, of course, trying to scoop them up at 2 or 3 times the price of the
yes, indeed.
Department of Government Efficiency strikes again. Yeah.
Well, on that cheery note,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say take care all, and see you around later in the meeting,
All
hopefully.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for
again.
joining.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye bye.